This is the place where NFL legends live on and share their stories. This is the place for our spotlight on the positive segment, sharing what's good in the world of sport. This is also the place for the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. This place I speak of, Thursday Night Tailgate. Let's say hello to your hosts, Chris-Mascaro and bob-lazzari. Guys, take it away.
Thank you, Joe. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on Thursday Night Tailgate, where your favorite NFL legends live on. Chris-Mascaro and bob-lazzari here with you. We're going to do our best to brighten up the next couple of hours for you. TNT is brought to you by the great folks over at Kyvan Foods, Coastal Orthopedics, the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory, and our wonderful partners over at the NFL Alumni Association and the Gridiron Greats. And just like we do every week, Bob and I, we've got 5 great guests that we're looking forward to sharing with you tonight. First up, we'll get a visit from the CEO of the new Spring League, Brian Woods. Last week you heard John Bach talking about his new role coaching the offensive line for the 4 teams that will be a part of the Spring League's inaugural season. So we'll get some more details about the league, when and where they're going to be playing, when it's going to get started up, and a whole lot more when Brian joins us here in about 15 minutes. Then, following Brian, Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins, he'll be with us just like he is every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Following Tony, we'll get a return visit from one of our good friends, former Steelers and Falcons defensive back Randy Fuller. We'll kick off hour number 2 with one of our favorite hitters of all time on the baseball side, former Pirates, Rangers, and Expos first baseman and outfielder Al Oliver. Always have such a great time hearing Al's story, so we look forward to that in hour number 2. And then we'll round out the show with one of our longtime friends and listeners and supporters of the show, great supporter of the show, a guy who's also in our Listener Hall of Fame, and that's Marc Uhlmann. Marc is also the co-owner of SteelCityBlitz.com, which has got a lot of, great Steelers content in there. So it's going to be great getting his thoughts on the Steelers and the upcoming draft and a bunch more. So look forward to having Marc round out the show with us about 90 minutes from now. So we're set to have a lot of fun tonight. So you know what? Sit back, relax, let us take your mind off everything else going on in your life for the next couple of hours. But, like we do every week, the best way to start off the show is by bringing in my co-host, Mr. Bob-Lazzari. Good evening, Bob. How are you tonight, my friend?
How are you, Chris? I'm doing okay up here in New England. As good as anyone can be in the early spring here.
Yeah, obviously, for me, Bob, and I know, we both, share a love for the game of golf. You do a lot, with some of the golf tournaments up in the New England area. But spring means the Masters, and the Masters starts next week. I got to tell you, Bob, I got tickets. My son and I we're going to be going on Monday. But the forecast for Monday right now is 100% chance of rain, and I got to tell you, I'm on my knees doing, saying my prayers and all of that sort of thing. Please, the good Lord wouldn't rain me out for a third time. I've been blessed, Bob, to go every year since '01, and been rained out twice over that time. I certainly hope that that next week isn't a third time.
Yeah, as you know, Chris, that's a very special place to be, rain or not. But, yeah, you'd like to see some playing going on and just the magic of that place. But there's going to be no golf up here for a while, Chris. Snow tomorrow, sleet. So,
really?
Welcome. Well, yeah. We had a 54-degree day today. Beautiful. I was out exercising, sun shining. And then now tomorrow, highs in the 30s, rain, sleet mix right into Saturday. So here we're back at square one, Chris. It's going to change someday.
Spring is eventually going. They promise you spring is eventually going to happen. For a prolonged period of time in New England, it really is going to come.
It's horrific, Chris, because of the softball, baseball teams here that play high school ball here. Everybody has got to cancel their games and reschedule and shorten seasons, and just been that kind of winter. We've had worse as far as snowfall, but it's just lingering. I call it winter. It's not winter anymore, but you get the picture, and all we could do is just wait for better days. Maybe another week from now. Next week, hopefully when I talk to you, I'll have some good news.
Yeah, fingers crossed for you, my friends. Fingers crossed, no rain on Monday for us, and fingers crossed that you guys start to get some spring weather, my friend. All right, Bob, we got a lot to talk about this week, so let's get into this week's Bob's Take segment. And, I think the biggest news so far this week, Bob, has been the owners voting 31-1 to approve the Raiders' move from Oakland to Las Vegas. The lone no vote came from Dolphins owner Stephen Ross. So, the move is currently scheduled, Bob. Is not going to happen, at least right now. They're saying not, until prior to the 2019 season. So it's going to be a long, slow ripping off of that Band-Aid. So, Bob, your thoughts on the Oakland fans yet again losing the Raiders, but this time in what's going to be a very long and drawn-out and painful divorce?
Oh, it's been such a up and down emotions, Chris, for years, as you know. And I'm not even a Oakland Raider fan, but being an NFL fan overall, and having grown up watching the Dr. Death, Skip Thomas, and Otis Sistrunk, and Daryl LaMonica, you just had somewhere in your heart, and if you were an NFL fan back in the day, you just had to watch the Oakland Raiders. They were scary to watch. They were great to watch. They were talented. One of the most popular and memorable franchises ever. And to see this happening is tough, Chris. And Davis, let's face it. Al Davis was always into making money. Very good football guy. Every guy we've talked to on this show has the utmost respect for Al Davis. But, he was a businessman also. And he's passed that down to his son, Mark, big time. And Davis is doing the PR thing right now, hoping he's pretty much trying to get a championship there before they move out of here. He's got a couple seasons, Chris. That 19 season looks like it's kind of up in limbo. They may be playing in Vegas. We heard San Antonio. You never know. But there's always things in the news with the Oakland Raiders, whether it's on the field or move-wise. But I do feel sorry for those fans out there that have been with the black and white team. I mean, for so long, Chris. And, again, you were privy to those kind of teams back in the day also, how fun they were to watch. It's going to seem so strange to be watching that team in Vegas. And for years, guys like Tagliabue said there'll never be a team in Vegas, just too much gambling going on. So you could see how that's going by the wayside. If there's money to be made, there'll be a team there. And guess what? In 2020, there will be.
Yeah, it is tough, Bob, and we've talked about this before on the show. But I hate it when any city loses their franchise. Even growing up, I hated the Cleveland Browns. That was sort of the Steelers' main rival, if you will. Back in the 70s and early part of the 80s. Boy, I just hated them. But the idea that they that those fans that were so passionate about their team lost it. When they up and moved and went over to Baltimore. Obviously, they got it back a few years later. But I felt so sorry for those folks because I can't imagine what it would be like to have the Steelers up and move and go somewhere else, right? And I feel bad now for the St. Louis fans that the Rams weren't their team for all those years. They had the Cardinals, so they lose the Cardinals and they lose the Rams. So they've lost franchises twice. And the Raiders have moved obviously to L.A. Now they're going to they move back. Now they're going to move to Vegas. I just hate seeing fans the team that they love and they've grown to love in St. Louis when the Rams moved there. I hate to see that happen to them. It's not right. That's not right. And the Raiders, I thought, boy, you talk about a franchise that you go all the way back to the AFL days, right, Bob? I mean, they were roots, deep roots in the city of Oakland. And then, to yank it out to go to L.A., that's bad enough. And now to do it to them a second time to go to Vegas, boy, my heart goes out to those fans to lose their team like that. Terrible situation, in my opinion, Bob.
Totally agree.
Hi, Bob. A couple other things. The Bills have hired Gary Madeline, who is a public image consultant to help them improve their public image and the image of General Manager Doug Whaley as well. And I'm guessing this is a move to kind of help repair, some of the damage, that was caused by Rex Ryan, during his time there. But you know what? That's what you get when you bring in, the Ryan circus to town, right? You're going to get craziness and some, things that, kind of make you shake your head and, try to hide from some of the things that Rex likes to say. Then, at the end of last year, they completely botched interim head coach, Anthony Lynn, he had a press conference. Whaley had a year-end press conference. Both of those things went badly, Bob. And Bob, I'm not sure. The Bills fans, right now, if you know that the Bills have hired a public image consultant, what can you believe, that comes out from anything having to do with the Buffalo Bills? You got to believe everything is completely scripted, kind of made for television, right? At this point, anytime you've got an image consultant in there, it's sort of like a lot of the press conferences that we see, Bob, when when a player or somebody has done something that they shouldn't have done, 24, 48 hours later, they come out with a hey, go read this on camera, right, to say how sorry you are and you'll never do it again, blah blah blah. Well, here's what you've got now with the Buffalo Bills. So, Bob, your thoughts on the Bills hiring an image consultant?
Oh, well, let's get this straight right off the bat, Chris. Image consultant, talent consultant, a.k.a. it's called a spin doctor, right? And you and I are on the same. We're on the same wavelength here as far as, isn't it ironic that when you hire someone like this, it's already a bad PR move because it's saying your image is bad and it's being bad and it's still bad, whatever. I think you hit it right with like a Rex Ryan, Chris. When they hired him, and our good friend Angelo Kane will second this, when they hired him, we said, look, the people that were familiar with him in New York, there's going to be problems. If they don't win, it's going to get worse, and it's going to get worse, and he won't be around too many more years. It all came to fruition. And but this whole thing to get an image consultant, Chris, they've made so many bad moves over the last few years. You know how they've gone with the quarterback, DJ Manuel, and the whole thing nothing has worked out there. The coaches haven't worked out there. So maybe this is it's almost like a first way to try to clean house in a way, and to make sure no one from this point on says anything stupid, which will get that franchise below where they are right now. I don't know. Don't you think, Chris, they should spend the time and money to go out and maybe put it toward the draft and maybe scouting or something, but a talent consultant to basically coach guys what to say and to keep the coaches looking well? This is a nightmare. It's a public image thing, which is making their image even worse.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly the point, Bob. Right? They bring somebody in to help themselves look better, right? Say the right things, look this way, kind of thing. And actually, I think it works against them. Again, I'm not a Bills fan. We do have Angelo Kane, our good friend Ange is a huge Bills fan. Christine Lisi, another great friend of the show. She's a huge Bills fan. It would be interesting to kind of get their take on what they think about the Bills having to go out and do this. But the other point you make, Bob, I think is also very true in that these guys don't come for free, right? So you would think, the best way to have a better public image is win, right? Make some good decisions, right? Win a few games, right? Get yourself in the playoff hunt, and then, it does wonders for your image. Winning solves everything, right? So you would think, and goodness knows how much this man is making to come in to be a consultant. But, I'm sure it's probably in the six figures somewhere to come in to do that sort of thing. Well, you know what? Go hire yourself another scout, to your point, Bob, right? Go out and hire somebody that can help you find, guys that do a better job of, looking at guys, in the smaller schools, the fifth, sixth round guys that you might be able to go out there and get that can make an impact on this team, right? Maybe you hire yourself a different, strategist or something around football, so that maybe what we need is to call some better plays. Hey, maybe what we need is to go out and do a better job of assessing, free agent talent. Again, getting all the way back to winning is going to help your public image better than someone who's scripting something and going to put it on a piece of paper or a teleprompter, and then when they march their head coach out there, hey, read this, right? And people can see through that stuff. So, yeah, I think you make a lot of good points, Bob. I agree with you. I'd like to see the Bills go out and spend their money a little differently than someone that can spit shine your image.
There you go.
Bob, next season, the league is going to be changing their replay process. Gone is going to be the hooded replay monitor, for the head referee to go peer into, right, and see what happened. It's going to be replaced by a tablet, right? That's sort of the way the world is going, right? Here's a tablet, kind of thing. So that's what they're going to be using. Senior VP of officiating Dean Blandino is going to be making the final decision on all reviewed calls. So, and those calls are going to be announced, Bob, to the stadium crowd before TV comes back, from commercial. Because what happens when the challenge flag happens, right? They're going to look at it. The network goes to commercial. By the time we come back, the decision will have already been announced to the stadium, and play is going to be moved on. Hopefully, the idea here is to speed up the game. Is that a good move or a bad move, Bob? To be everything centralized, one guy makes the call, and then we need to move this game along a little quicker, so we're going to save the 30 seconds or so from when they come back from break to announce what the decision was.
Well, Chris, if you read the article, the ESPN has publicized it a lot. First of all, they really think there won't be much of a change because Blandino was behind the scenes already, and they think gave his opinion on many of the calls over the last few years, and so I don't think they don't think it's going to change that much as far as who's looking at the plays too much. The tablet is just for the referees at the game site to basically look at it themselves. It will go to Blandino. Chris, I'm more of a fan than maybe some other people. I think it should be kind of centralized. I give Blandino and the NFL credit at least for putting in the hands of one guy. He's going to take heat or he's going to get love, Chris, depending on, how well he does his job. I think most NFL fans will know at the end of the season whether the guy was 70% correct, 30% correct, and I think the guy has been doing it enough where I think he can get it right. It takes it out of the hands of a so-called committee that when you have too many hands in the broth, Chris, it can get messed up. So I think, again, without not being many changes here, you're just getting rid of the hood and you're bringing in a tablet. It's really no different than it has been, but now Blandino is basically on the spot for being the man, and I actually like it. And I think if it does speed up the game, even 30 seconds to a minute, you've painstakingly watched some of these plays that take forever. If you can't see it right away after 3 or 4, and I think Blandino will be on top of this. So at first I was kind of, I said, is it really going to change or whatever? But I think having it centralized now, Chris, and taking it out of the hands of more people is actually a good thing.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Bob. I think you make a good analogy. The more hands you have in things, the more opportunities there are for error. So I agree. Hopefully, the only thing I want to see is at the end of the year, percent correct versus percent wrong.
Yes.
Right. How many times did Blandino get it right versus how many times did he get it wrong? So I think that would be an interesting stat. Goodness knows we have a stat on everything else. So I'd like to see his success rate at the end of the year. But, yeah, I think it's a good move. All right, everyone, like we do every week here on Thursday Night Tailgate, we want to tell our military personnel who are listening in around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network, thank you. Thank you for doing what you do to protect all of us in our way of life. To everyone else listening in, whether it's on Podbean or the streaming service of your choice, well, we certainly thank you for being a part of the show as well. And we hope you'll join us in thanking our brave men and women that are out there serving in our military and are protecting our way of life. If you happen to see one of our members in the military, wherever you are in life, right? Whether you're at the grocery store, you're in the airport, you're in a restaurant, just sort of out and about. Wherever you might be, please stop for a moment and tell those folks thank you. When you think about heroes, it really should be them. We also want to thank our veterans for your service and the sacrifices that you and your families have made for us over the years. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. Big thank you as well to Sean Cruz and all the great folks over at the Armed Forces Radio Network. It continues to be an honor that you've got Thursday Night Tailgate as a part of your network. You can find our show by going online to armedforcesradionetwork.org. And veterans, please continue to check out globalvoiceforveterans.org. What a great site with news and articles that are specifically geared towards our veterans out there that we're sure you're going to find both interesting and beneficial to you. Again, globalvoiceforveterans.org. TNT is sponsored by Kyvan Foods. NFL star Reggie Kelly brings his authentic flavor of traditional Southern cooking to market with his Kyvan Foods products. Made with the finest ingredients, Kyvan Foods invites you to appreciate the goodness of the exceptional flavors in their salsas, their sauces, their apple butter, and their other fine products. Make Kyvan items a part of your tailgating spread, and even if that tailgating takes place at your house around the TV. The taste of Kyvan products is unbelievable, folks. Amazingly good. Available through Walmart.com and select Kroger stores, or you can order online at Amazon or Kyvan's website itself at Kyvan82.com. And Kyvan is spelled Kyvan. TNT is also sponsored by Dr. Peter Candelora and the great folks over at Coastal Orthopedics. Folks, if you're dealing with joint pain, wherever it is in your body, your knees, your shoulders, your hips, your other joints, please don't just live with it. Do what the Gridiron Greats do to get relief, and that's contact Dr. Peter Candelora and the great folks over at Coastal Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. Their number one goal is patient care and satisfaction. They can get you back to enjoying life. For more information or to schedule a consultation, give them a call at 888-825-1150. Again, 888-825-1150, or visit them online at bone-dr.com. In baseball season, right, we're about to get underway. Opening day next week. If you love the game of baseball, you've got to go check out the Louisville Slugger Museum and Factory. They were inducted into the TripAdvisor Certificate of Excellence Hall of Fame in the museum. It's a very cool experience for everybody in your family because you get to go walk their live production line and see some of the 1.8 million bats that they make every year. And they've been doing it now for 132 years. Don't miss the Bat Vault. You hear me bragging about that place every single week here on TNT because you get to go in there and hold some of the game-used bats from some of the game's greatest legends of all time. Guys like Hank Aaron and Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, my hero growing up, Willie Stargell. To find out more information about the museum and to book your visit, go to sluggermuseum.com. All right, now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Brian Woods. Let me give you some background on Brian. Played his college ball at Ole Miss, where he was a walk-on safety. He transferred to Iowa State and eventually graduated with his law degree from West Virginia. Spent some time as a graduate assistant coach at Iowa State. Back in 2012, he did an internship with the Jets as a salary cap analyst. He was the executive director of the Medal of Honor Bowl back in 2003. He became the CEO and the commissioner of the FXFL in 2014, and that league ran for a couple of years through 2016. He is currently the CEO of the Spring League, which is scheduled to get started up here next month, and we're glad to have him with us tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Brian, Chris, and Bob, thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi, Brian.
Hey, Chris, how you guys doing?
Great, good. Brian. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing well. I got to correct a couple of your things. I didn't transfer to Iowa State. I actually was a graduate assistant football coach there. And I was the executive director of the Medal of Honor Bowl in 2014. So, but in any case, just wanted to make it accurate. That's all.
I appreciate you doing that, Brian. So, Brian, I want to start by talking about, the new Spring League. You guys, scheduled to get going here pretty soon up at the famous Greenbrier Resort up in West Virginia. Give us a background on the league and what you guys are hoping to do.
Well, conceptually, it's a developmental platform for professional football players. The core player in this league is a guy who's aged 23 to 25. A lot of these individuals have been on practice squads. They've been on NFL active rosters. They're essentially looking for live game repetitions. As we know, the college game is really no longer developing players for the professional game, and so there really needs to be a medium that exists between the college game, that is the NCAA level, and the NFL. And we've created a platform that is going to operate in a very condensed time format for only 3 weeks at the Greenbrier. We're going to have around 130 to 140 players there when it's all said and done. We've received the tacit support, at least from the NFL community, in that most of the teams have reached out to me already and have informed me that they're sending their pro personnel departments, general managers, and the like down to the Greenbrier in West Virginia to evaluate some of the players we have there. And it falls at a good time at the on the NFL calendar in that we're going to wrap up operations the day before the NFL draft starts. We're going to have 4 teams there. We're going to play 6 games over the course of 3 weeks. And like I said, we're going to have a lot of young players there, but we also have a sprinkling of veteran players, names that your listeners would recognize, guys like Kellen Winslow Jr., Greg Hardy, Brandon Browner, Ben Tate, guys that still feel like they have some gas left in the tank, so to speak, and want to use the event as kind of a showcase for them. So we're pretty excited. Players report next Wednesday, and our first game of the season kicks off April 15th.
Wow, so you got, that's pretty soon. So guys show up, and that's a pretty tight window, right, from next Wednesday to the 15th. Talk about how you're going to get things plays together, teams decided. How's that structure going to round out and take shape?
So, and that's a great question because we've received a lot of fan interest through Facebook and Twitter. Everybody wants to know the rosters, and I've made it very clear to everyone that essentially all of these players are going to train and work together for the first 7 to 10 days before the inaugural first game kicks off. So the idea is to create as much parity as possible, to make sure that the rosters are well balanced, but essentially everyone is going to be practicing together with one big coaching and instructional staff. And we do limit the installation, so we're not going to come in with a massive playbook on offense or a lot of different defensive fronts, blitzes, and schemes. We want these players to be able to fly around, have fun, to be able to showcase themselves. And so we make it simple. It's only 10 days before the first game is played, and so we limit a little bit of the installation on the offense and the defensive side of the ball. So it should be very efficient, but ultimately we're going to put a good product on the field that's going to be NFL caliber.
And Brian, the site FAQs page says the games are going to be televised nationally. Which networks are going to be picking up the games?
So right now we're just in the final round of negotiations. We've had several media partners approach us. Most of these are what you call the modern era, which, as you know, the linear platform is dying off very quickly. And most people, I think this year alone, this was the first time ever in history that over 50% of people now get their media from something other than a television. And so tablets, iPhones, you name it. And so the streaming platforms that exist, we've been talking to some of those, and some have really expressed a strong interest. And so right now, we're just trying to finalize what the best partnership is going to be. But we will be in a position within the next 7 days, prior to our first game kicking off, to announce publicly our media partnership, so our fans are going to be able to, watch games from around the country.
Bob, questions for Brian?
Yeah, Brian, it's great to speak with you. I have a picture in front of me of the complex down there in West Virginia. It's just such a bucolic, beautiful area. You're familiar with West Virginia. I'm looking at the natural grass fields with the turf field in the background, the rolling hills. Tell our listeners more about this complex. It's like something out of a movie. It's just incredible.
It's really phenomenal, Bob, in the sense that it was built in 2014. Jim Justice, who is now the governor-elect of the state of West Virginia, owns the Greenbrier. So his daughter has stepped in and taken over operations, and now, of course, he's the governor and has more pressing issues to deal with. But his idea was to come in and revitalize the property. It was the first resort ever constructed in America. And what's very unique about it is it was a place where most of the ex-presidents would vacation. There was an underground bunker there. They've since declassified it, and they give tours of the bunker. But he was trying to attract and try to revitalize the property. In his efforts, he decided to try to attract an NFL team. So he constructed a $30 million complex, and the New Orleans Saints were the team he was interested in bringing to the Greenbrier at that point. They helped in the design of the building, and so it is what I tell people all around is that it's an NFL caliber facility that's not actually owned or operated by an NFL team. So it's an incredible facility. We're very happy to be taking part. The backdrop there in West Virginia, it's beautiful country, as you probably know just by looking at the pictures. But it's a unbelievable facility. We're very happy to be working with the Greenbrier in this partnership, and we're hoping to be there for many years to come.
And I was interested, Brian, in actually the whole tryout process. You said you're limiting the league to 160 players. There's the application process. It's pretty neat that guys could send game film stats if they think they're on that cusp of getting to the next level. How is that coming along as far as the limit, and are they rolling in the applications?
Yeah, we actually started taking and evaluating players back in December of last year. And as you know, like anything else, there's no abundance in this country of professional football talent. There's a lot of qualified players out there, but we've gotten a slew of applications. we've accepted. And the great thing about this is we decided to do an application process because anytime you start a new league, no matter what the concept or no matter how big or how small it is, you will get players from everywhere. And if you say tomorrow, I'm going to start a league and we're going to do an open tryout at X location, you'll have 5,000 people out there in the parking lot trying, to try out. And so we thought that this would be, we set an application fee so not everybody off the street could apply. And we wanted to make sure that we limited it to serious candidates. And it's worked out pretty well for us. At this point, we've accepted nearly 60% of everyone that applies. And so the people that are applying are very talented individuals. So even a guy like Greg Hardy or a guy like Brandon Browner, these guys all submitted an application, paid a $350 fee, and were obviously accepted into the Spring League. So it's worked out very well for us. It's streamlined the process. And the talent that we have. I joke around a little bit with people, but I tell them when we get done assembling our rosters at the Greenbrier, we'll be able to put at least one team together down there that could probably beat the Cleveland Browns. So, it's going to be very talented players.
And Brian, the website says that you guys will be using some experimental and new technology to try to make the game safer. What are some of the newer things that you guys might be trying out?
One of the things we're doing specifically as it relates to the kickoff format, and this goes back to when I was involved with the FXFL, is that Mike Westhoff approached me. And Mike is a legendary special teams coach, but also a very innovative gentleman. And he came to me and said, look, I know what you're trying to do. I believe in your vision. Let me try to help you a little bit. And he kind of proposed some ideas to me. And one was this kickoff format. So if you can imagine it, you move the kickoff line back. Instead of kicking off from the 35, you're actually kicking off from the 25. But then you have the receiving team has to place a minimum of 8 players within 10 yards of the kickoff line. And so it's a kickoff now that's not going to end in a touchback, but you put all these players in a very condensed area, so you really greatly reduce the incident for a high-impact collision. And, that's the most problematic play in professional football. Pop Warner has eliminated the kickoff altogether. I've actually reached out to them and mentioned what we were doing with the FXFL and said, hey, look, you should take a look at this because we did it for 2 years. We didn't have a single injury on it. It really did assist in making the game a little safer. So we're trying to modify. We're going to play the game in accordance to NFL rules, but there's going to be some minor deviations that we're going to experiment with. And one is the kickoff format that I think more people should take a look at because it could clearly make the game a little safer and keep the kickoff from being eliminated from football altogether.
And Brian, John Bach is a great friend of the show. John's been on the show, dozens of times. And I know he's one of the guys you've got lined up there to help coach the offensive line. But talk about the coaching staffs and who some of the other coaches you've got.
Really, when you put a league like this together and the core philosophy is to create a developmental platform, you're not looking for names. You're not going out there looking necessarily for guys that have names that are going to resonate. We're not out there looking for a Rex Ryan. What we're looking for are the best fundamental teachers and instructors that we can find, and we feel like we've assembled a really quality staff at this point. We've got guys like Steve Fairchild and Terry Shea working with quarterbacks. We've got guys like Donnie Henderson working with the defensive backs, and Donnie was just with the Buffalo Bills last year and has great experience working with the secondary. Obviously, a guy like Art Valero as well that's had several years of experience in the NFL. We've got guys that have coached for 10-plus years at the professional ranks. We've got Denny Crehan coming in, who's coached in college in West Virginia and also had 10-plus years in the CFL. And then we've got guys like John Bach, who played for 5 or 6 years in the league, have coached at the collegiate level. I was lucky enough to get John Bach involved with the Medal of Honor Bowl as one of our coaches. He worked with, at the time I had brought in Chan Gailey and worked with Chan on his staff. And you talk about a great fundamental coach and a guy who loves to teach and instruct and really has a great rapport with players, and that was important to me. And so John has been a very close friend over the last few years, and we're excited to have him involved as well. But it's a great staff. It's come together very nicely for us.
And Brian, we've had guys from Major League Football, another spring league concept that hasn't gotten off the ground yet on the show. We've also I'm sure you know Don Yee, Tom Brady's agent. He's looking to start up a spring league next year out in California. Garrick Jones is trying to establish one, the state's developmental football league in the middle part of the country. But none of those guys have really gotten anything off the ground and going. Why is the spring league going to succeed while those guys have struggled so much?
And that's a great question. And I think the concept that Donald Yee has is something I thought about a couple of years ago. I've always told people if you wanted to beat the NFL at their game, is that you'd go out there and round up some of the richest people in the country, maybe guys like Marc Uhlmann that were really into sports and get it, and say, you know what, let's just grab the NFL talent before they can get it, and let's lock these guys in and develop them. And that's effectively in 4 to 5 years, you could make some headway with that because most guys are in and out of the NFL with under 4 years. So I think, I definitely applaud Donald Yee for what he's doing. I think it's a great idea and concept. But the one thing I would say is that it's a concept that's going to probably cost about $150 to $200 million just to get it off the ground, to get it going. And in the modern era, most people don't want to wait 7 to 10 years to see a return on their investment. So it's hard to sell investors on that sort of concept. But most importantly, we've got what I feel like a very sustainable business model, in that we've eliminated all the major costs associated with the traditional sports league. Conceptually, the spring league is very similar to the NBA summer league, and I mean it to this extent. We've cut out player payroll. Our players come in, they receive housing and meals. They're with us for effectively 20 days, but they don't get paid. There's no workers' comp associated with it. We've centralized all the teams in one location, so you've eliminated team travel. Not to mention that now most traditional leagues have multiple venues they have to deal with. We don't have multiple venues. So we've essentially eliminated all the major costs associated with the traditional sports league, but we can still tap into the revenue streams that you would, and that is ticketing and sponsors. We've had some really interesting sponsors come to the table already and show real strong interest in our property, and partly because we have a business model they think is going to actually stick around, one that can last for many years to come. So I feel like from a sustainability factor, anybody out there that's proposing a professional football league really has to take a better look at their business model and say, well, what's the end game here? Is it to stick around for the next 5 to 7 years and just hope that at some point somebody gives us a major TV deal? Or is it to actually do something in the sense that the sustainability factor is there? And I think we have found that with the Spring League. And I think this year, without question, is a pilot year for us, but we feel very confident that this is a model that has staying power.
Bob, one more for Brian before we let him go.
Yeah, Brian, on a personal note, I found it fascinating when Chris told me you interned as a Jet on the salary side there, and I would think that was an amazing experience, Brian. I don't think too many people know what these GMs are up against as far as the numbers and the finance people. I'm sure it's probably giving you some invaluable lessons as you continue to go on from here.
Yeah, and I think that was a very unique way to get a good view on how a front office works and what we refer to all the time as cap casualties. So those are guys that can still play, but based on their minimum years of experience in the NFL, you have to pay them a certain level. So even if they're due $850 and by the NFL CBA and they come back to you and say, I'll play for the league minimum, you just can't do it. So that's something that a lot of people don't understand, the dynamics of the salary cap. And I was fortunate enough to work with Ari Nissim, and he was one of the best at salary cap, and now he's doing very well for himself as an agent. He's out there in the agent community working with Rock Nation, Jay-Z's outfit, so to speak. So, I learned a lot in a very short period of time about the salary cap, but it was definitely a very, very valuable experience. It was an interesting perspective to see it from that angle.
Brian, before we let you go, how can our listeners stay up to date with what's going on with the league and follow you and the league over social media as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to send the viewers and listeners, rather, to get more information is just go to www.thespringleague.com, and they'll see all of our social media handles from that angle. Obviously, we're lacking a little bit on content right now because we haven't played yet, but I assure you that players are reporting on Wednesday, and from there on, there's going to be just a massive amount of media pictures, bios. We brought in a producer from HBO Hard Knocks that was with HBO for several years to, basically handle all of our media and things of that nature. So there's going to be a lot of content on the website, so I would just encourage the listeners to head to our website to stay up to date with the Spring League.
Well, Brian, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to be a part of the show. It was great having you here tonight. We hope you'll come back and talk more about how, once the quick league is over, we'll talk about the first season and then where you guys are planning to go from there. We'd love to have you back.
Guys, I really appreciate Chris, especially. Thanks so much for having me on the show, and would love to come back again and tell you more. And anytime you want to come down to the Greenbrier and broadcast from the Greenbrier, we'd love to have you down there during the Spring League while we're conducting our first season.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Brian. We may take you up on that, my friend.
Good luck,
and we hope to catch up with you soon. In between now and then, Brian, all the best to you and your family.
Oh, same to you. Take care.
Good night. Take care.
All right, take care, Brian. So, Bob, it's interesting stuff, and how that whole thing is going to play out for Brian and the rest of the league. But you know what? He's got a point. No player salaries, no travel, no workers' comp, no multiple venues to have to pay for. So a lot of the major expenses won't be a part of the Spring League. So maybe they got a shot at pulling something off.
You would think so, Chris. And the sweet thing about this whole thing is you're going to have players there that are incredibly, incredibly hungry. I mean, they're there for one reason, Chris, and you could be assured that although it's a small community, very bucolic in the country, there are going to be a lot of scouts hanging around there because of that fact. You're going to have some familiar names and very hungry football players. So I hope they do well, Chris. I think financially they'll be okay for a while, and it's just to see if they can produce talent to the NFL. That will be the thing that sets them apart.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how they go. So we'll keep our finger on that pulse, I promise you. All right, we've got our next guest, Tony Collins, hanging on the line. We'll get to Tony on the other side of this station identification.
This is Christine Lisi, and you're listening to Thursday Night Tailgate, where NFL stars go to tell their stories with Chris-Mascaro and Bob-Lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line in his weekly time slot is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins. Good evening, Tony. How are you tonight, my friend?
Hi, Tony.
Good evening, Chris and Bob. I'm doing fantastic.
Good, thanks.
So, Tony, let's get right into it. I wanted to get your thoughts this week on a couple of the moves and non-moves, if you will, that your boys, the Patriots, have made so far this offseason. And one of the moves they've made, Tony, is signing defensive back Stephon Gilmore, who was with the Bills. He got a 5-year, $65 million contract. Meanwhile, Super Bowl hero Malcolm Butler still yet unsigned, not sure what's going to happen with him. Are you surprised that the Patriots went out and spent a bunch of money to bring Gilmore in, but have yet to show the love to Butler, a guy who essentially saved Super Bowl 49 for them?
Right now, nothing surprised me with Belichick, man. Sometimes you just don't know. And I think what Belichick is trying to do, if he can pull it off, is keeping Butler there also and having two good corners. Two good lockdown corners if they can pull this off. Now, I don't know what type of relationship that Butler's agent has with the team, but I think it would be really wise for us to try to keep both of them if we can. But like I say, man, nothing with Belichick surprises me with players, man, because you got to be very careful what you say and how you react to some of the things that Belichick does. And so he's looking for that. He's looking for that special guy, that team player that can fit into his system.
And Tony, a move they haven't made yet is really signing a stud running back, right? LeGarrette Blount hasn't been re-signed, and there's been speculation, and we've talked about this about bringing in Adrian Peterson, but he's still out there on the market. They currently have 4 running backs on their roster. James White, who should have been the Super Bowl MVP in my opinion. You got Dion Lewis, you got DJ Foster, and then they brought in Rex Burkhead from Cincinnati as a free agent. Do you think that they could conceivably just go with those 4, or do you expect to see either Blount back in or someone like AP signed here at some point?
You I really don't expect anything different. It's going to be running back by committee with those guys. And as far as Belichick is concerned, I think all he's doing now is just making sure he has some capable running back. Burkhead is a good running back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield, and that's one of the things that all the backs at New England can do. Catching the ball out of the backfield is one of the closing things that a running back can do in the Belichick system. So I think it's going to be running back by committee. I don't think they're going to go out and try to find no superstar running back or anything like that. Belichick is happy with the rushing attack, and sometimes Brady leads the team in rushing in some games. So you just never know with Belichick, man. But I think it's going to be running back by committee with them.
Bob, questions for Tony?
Tony, there was a story that came out today. It kind of shocked me, but it shouldn't. It was about Robert Kraft hoping that Belichick would coach for another 15 years, Tony. Now, I'm thinking 15 years as a head coach in the league would be an incredible run. But this guy would be 80 at the time. Now, as you said, Tony, nothing would surprise you, anything that happens in that franchise. But let's face it, I mean, Belichick, it is a very tough job. He puts in incredible hours. How long, Tony, do you think he might be able to go on? Could he do another 10? What does he have to prove? I know it's beyond that right now. He's just driven. But realistically, I mean, we don't want this guy to end in a bad way. So what was your opinion when you heard 15 more years out of this guy?
I mean, that's kind of surprising, coaching to 80 years old. And the rate that he goes, I mean, he coaches hard. I mean, he lives there, so and that's going to take a toll on you. I mean, you can't mess with Father Time. Being a player or being a coach, Father Time is going to catch up with you somehow or some way. And so, I mean, 15 years, man, that's a lot of years. that's a lot of years. I can see maybe 10, but definitely not 15. I just can't see 15, and the rate that he goes at it. And that's the thing. Maybe he'll slow down a little bit. Maybe he might not spend so many hours in at the office. So you just never know. But I'll take that down to 10 and make it more realistic and push it at 10. And I think that's the longest he would be there.
I totally agree with you. And Tony, we had a guest on the show last week, and the topic of Rob Gronkowski came up, and how much talent the guy has, but how injury prone he is, just the way he plays, his size, the shots he takes, Tony. I wanted to get your opinion on this guy's future. Is there a way for him to change his style, Tony, to make him more healthier? What do you see for this guy in the next couple of years?
Rob he's a different animal, man. And one of the things I don't think he will do, or I don't think he can do, is change his style of play. I mean, that's the way he plays, and that's the way it is. Unfortunately, it takes a big toll on his body. One of the things I really don't want to see with him is, him taking that beating for years and years, and then when he gets 37, 40 years old, he can hardly walk. So, and the rate that he's going right now, and injuries that he's been dealing with, especially his back. One of the terrible things that you can do is have a bad back when you're trying to play football. So, to be honest with you, I would be surprised if he lasts another 5 years. I mean, I can't see him lasting another 5 years because of the way he plays the game. And I don't see him changing anyway because of who he is and, being the Gronk and that personality that he has. I don't see him changing his style of play.
Tony, a couple of weeks ago, speaking of tight ends, you talked about, former Patriots tight end Russ Francis being a guy who was a freak in nature, right? Always in great shape, didn't really spend much time in the gym or at practice. Give me the opposite side of that coin. Was there a guy who may have come in not all that touted, may have joined the team maybe as an undrafted free agent or a lower round pick, a guy who just worked his tail off and sort of wowed the coaching staff and ended up making the team?
You talking about back when I played?
Yeah, back when you played.
Robert Weathers he got drafted in the second round, I think it was, by the Patriots, I think a year after me. But his brother came in. His brother's name was Clarence. And to be totally honest with you, the reason how Clarence got on our team is he came up to visit Robert, his brother, it was during the off season, and we're out playing basketball. I mean, he's just jumping out of the gym and dunking all the time. We had a traveling basketball team, and so he would come with us when we would go play different organizations. And he's just a great athlete, and so he got an opportunity because of that to try out as a walker. He came and walked on, and man, he worked his butt off. And one of the things that I love about Clarence, he's a little receiver, but he has a lot of speed, but he can just jump out of the gym. And but the thing that I saw was his work ethic, because the odds were against him, man. It's just crazy for him being in the right place at the right time, and that's what happens a lot of times when you get a player that's a free agent. They're working their butt off, and sometimes they work their butt off and they're in the best shape, but they just don't fit into the system that the team that it's on. And that's one of the things that it's always a numbers game when you get in that free agent market. But Clarence Weathers was one of those guys, man, that odds were against him. No one thought that he would ever play at the level that he played at, as far as coming out of a little small college that he did. But no one gave him a shot, and he just got a shot by coming up and visiting his brother one off season. He played Clarence probably played about 7 years, because after he left New England, we went to Cleveland and played for a couple of years. So just a tremendous athlete, and his work ethic was just out of this world in making the team.
And Tony, we've had Drew Bledsoe on the show several times, and he came into the league a couple of years after you as well. Talk about your relationship and what it was like playing with Drew.
Well, actually, I didn't play with Drew. I was gone. I left there in '90, so I didn't get a chance to even play with Drew. But I heard a lot of great things about Drew, and from some of the thoughts that I got from him, that he was another one that was a tremendous worker and worked hard. But unfortunately for him, I don't think if he would ever got hurt, if he didn't get hurt, Drew, we would probably never known about Tom Brady. You just never know about that. And that's the thing about that. Just think about it. If Drew Bledsoe would have kept playing, and he was playing good football, he led the team to a Super Bowl 1 year, and that's the thing where it's just so crazy. You're one hit away from being out and letting somebody else take your position, and that's what happened with him with Tom Brady. So unfortunately for Bledsoe, after Tom came in, he couldn't get his job back. Pretty much like Romo now.
Bob, one more for Tony before we let him go.
Sure, Tony. You and I have touched on this before, how much respect you had for Raymond Berry. You played your last few years under him, and the more you look at him, Tony, he's not going to get the credit he deserves because of the whole Belichick era and all the success they've had. But when you were playing for him, Tony, this was a guy, I don't know if the players were so familiar with how good he was. We know he's a Hall of Famer, but you're looking at a guy who led the league in receptions yardage for three years out of 5, I think. Just an incredible athlete. Did the players in the locker room they had a lot of respect for him like you did, but did they know how good a player he was?
Oh, absolutely, man. when we knew that Raymond Berry was going to be our coach, everybody was excited, especially the older guys. You know, I was in my 4th year in the league, but the older guys were more excited because you got to understand, we had just had Ron Myers, and Ron Myers was straight from SMU, and you know, he brought that college atmosphere with him, and a lot of the older players didn't like his system or didn't like the way things were going. But Raymond Berry, man, with his stats and being a Hall of Famer and the respect he got when he walked into a room was just incredible because of who he was and what he did on the field. And that's one of the things that, you know, when you get a Hall of Fame player that can come out and be a successful coach, man, you really got something, because the thing about it is that the guys who are playing the game, they respect the guy who played the game before them and paved the way for them. And that's one of the things that Raymond Berry did, man. He set a standard of excellence. And the way he played, the way he practiced, and the way he taught us to practice, and the way he taught us to play was just totally incredible. And he turned our season around, not with players, but with attitude, and guys just wanted to run through a wall for him. You know, I had 2 coaches in my lifetime where I would run through a wall for, and Raymond Berry was one of those coaches. And so just a matter of, like I said, what he did on the field, and you can recognize how he knew the game like the back of his hand, and it was just a great experience for me as a player to be coached by such a great person, and that's what he was. He wasn't just a great player; he was a great person as well.
Tony, before we let you go, remind our listeners about the great things you're doing to help kids go to college.
TonyCollinsSpeaks.com. We're giving out $1,500 scholarships to kids. All they have to have is a 2.8 grade point average, 10 hours of community service, be accepted into a school, write a short essay. We're just trying to help as many kids as possible. Go on the website, make a donation, get a book. Every book that we sell helps a kid go to college.
Great stuff as always, Tony. Thanks for joining us again this week, my friend. We look forward to catching up with you again next Thursday night. In between now and then, take care and all the best to you and your family, Tony.
Good night, Tony.
Absolutely. You guys have a fantastic week. God bless.
Take care.
Take care, Tony. That is former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins, and great stuff as always from Tony, so we look forward to catching up with him again next week. Boy, anything that has to do with the Patriots, Tony is all over it. And East Carolina is his alma mater. We'll start to talk to him as we get closer to college football season as well, getting his thoughts on the Pirates. But great stuff as always from Tony. We got our next guest, Randy Fuller, hanging on the line. We'll get to Randy on the other side of this station identification.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and you're listening to TNT, Thursday Night Tailgate. Brace yourself for the explosion.
And now back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is our good friend Randy Fuller. Let me remind you about Randy's background. He's from Griffin, Georgia, which is just south of me here in Atlanta. Played his college ball at Tennessee State, where he was a 4-year letterman and an All-American defensive back. He was a 4th-round draft pick by the Denver Broncos in 1994, and he played 6 seasons in the NFL for Denver, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and Seattle. Was a part of the Steelers' 1995 AFC Championship team and a part of the Falcons' NFC Championship team in 1998. Randy's a great friend of the show, and we're always happy and excited when we get to have him as part of Thursday Night Tailgate. And here he is back with us again here tonight. Hey, Randy, Chris, and Bob, how have you been, my friend?
Hey, Randy.
Wonderful, guys. Hey, Chris. Hey, Bob. Eric, doing great. You forgot to remind the listeners that I was also the starting kick returner for Spencer High School in Columbus, Georgia.
My bad. That's my bad, Randy. I apologize for that. We'll get that next time.
Oh, man. Hey, it's good to be back on the show, guys. How y'all doing?
All right, excellent. Randy. Thank you. So, Randy, we haven't had you since the Super Bowl was down there in Houston, where you're living now, and you did some work for Fox TV during the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl itself. So, talk about what was your experience like being a part of Fox TV?
Well, it was actually it was Fox Sports Latin America, so it's a little different considering I do not speak Spanish, and they translated everything for me, so I had to really be on top of things to know when to laugh at a few of the comments because it was on live television as well. But it was a pretty incredible experience. Actually, being here in my backyard, being in Houston, got a chance to just meet a lot of great people, and I even had some friends that was vacationing over in Mexico, in Cabo and Cancun, and they were calling me saying, "Man, dude, I'm at the beach, and I look up and go to the bar, and I look up and I see you on television in Mexico." So that was an incredible experience.
And Randy, you know, like I say, you were at the Super Bowl, so being a former member of the Falcons and a member of the the last Falcons team that played in the Super Bowl back in '98. Talk about your range of emotion during the game. You had to be pretty excited at one point midway through the third quarter when the Falcons had a 28-3 lead, but then at some point, I'm imagining you started to get nervous when things started to head in the wrong direction.
Well, a lot of memories came back. Having played against the Patriots many times, I had never seen an easy game against the Patriots. That was the first thought. The second thought was all week they asked me who did I think was going to win. And I had the same answer every time, which whoever has the ball last. So to me, it didn't matter whether it was a 25-3 score or 19-20 score. Whoever had the ball last, I felt would be the team that was going to win. So, everybody was pretty pumped up about the Falcons, but, I mean, I had to stay steady. As a former player, you never can get too excited and feel like the game is over. So I maintained, a pretty cool posture, and when everything started crumbling, man, I mean, I was gritting my teeth, and I was just trying to pull and cheer as much as I could for the Falcons, and the results was not what I wanted, but that's why you play the game, and the Patriots, they deserved it because they worked hard to win it.
And Randy, looking back at your Super Bowl experience when you were with the Falcons, you guys played the Broncos. You guys got down by 25 points, 31-6 early in the fourth quarter. Looking back at that, what was the mood of the team, at the Falcons team that you were on? What was the mood of the team then? And did you guys think that you had a chance to come back like the Patriots did?
You know what? I'm not going to say that we did. We knew we still had a lot of ball game left. So, the whole thing was just one play at a time, and anything is possible. But, going into that game, we were kind of already defeated before we even got started, dealing with the incident that happened the night before the Super Bowl. So, I mean, even before the game, it was going to be a hard one for us to pull off because you're really talking about having just a mental mindset to just erase everything and go play the best football. Unfortunately, we had played the best football game against the Vikings 2 weeks prior to that. So you really was asking a lot to come back and play the Super Bowl with the Broncos playing the way they were playing for us to really pull it off. But, I mean, had we played anywhere the way we had played the whole season, we definitely could have beat the Broncos that year.
Bob, questions for Randy?
Randy, I think we've asked you this before, but I still think it's a fascinating question. Having played like you did at Tennessee State and being drafted by the Broncos, that 1 year you played under Wade Phillips, when you started first practicing in Denver, Randy, the difference in altitude from Tennessee and any other place you ever played, how did you adjust to it? Was it tough? And how long did it take you to acclimate?
To be brutally honest, I was part of an intense running program at Tennessee State. I mean, intense. Probably one of the hardest in the nation. So being a DB, it wasn't that hard for me. Now, had I been an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, it might have been harder. But for me, I've always been a track guy. I've always run. And me going out to Denver back and forth a couple of times, by the time I hit the practice field, I didn't have a problem with it. Some guys do, but for me, I did not have a problem with it. But I did have a lot of family and friends that would come in town They would come to my apartment. They'll walk up the steps, and they'll go sit down. I'm like, what's wrong? And they're like, I can't breathe. I'm like, what do you mean you can't breathe? So I thought it affect everyone else, but it didn't affect me.
Randy, I'm going to ask you what I asked a lot of DBs we've had on the show recently, and that's about the current game and how the referees are calling pass patterns and pass plays. And it seems to me, and I'm sure you'll agree, Randy, the offensive guys are going to get away with a lot of stuff because they're usually the first to react, and it's the defensive guy who, in reaction to that, gets caught a lot. But is it to the point where these referees are damned if they do, damned if they don't? Is their job almost impossible now?
I mean, I don't think so. I mean, I think it's very simple. If you can see whether that defensive back is turning his head to make a play on the ball, then I think it's whoever everybody should have equal opportunity to make a play on the ball. But if the guy's not getting his head around, I mean, they're going to call that. They've been calling that for years that way. So I just think the technique of the defensive back, the coaches probably could do a better job of just getting them to turn their head to make a play on the ball. And I think if they do that, then it makes it easier for the ref to make that call. I mean, you just don't want that to happen when the game is on the line. That's the biggest thing. So the refs really got to do a great job of making sure that they pay close attention, especially once third and fourth quarter hit. The game is just so important and it changes. So that's what I think on that.
Randy, I want to get a couple of your thoughts on some of the young Steeler players, particularly in the defensive back. You know, we saw Artie Burns, start the majority of the season for the Steelers. Sean Davis came along and became, starting safety, during the course of the season. Two of their top draft picks last year. What's your assessment from what you saw from those guys last year?
Oh, a lot of promise, a lot of hope. Still a defensive backs. I mean, for a minute there, I mean, it was DBU. I mean, we always had great defensive back play, and we had a drop off. But I think the biggest thing is it really doesn't matter who we have on the back end. I'm still waiting for the pass rush. I mean, that's all I want for Christmas. Give me a pass rush. I need pressure on the quarterback. All right? It can't just be the oldest guy on the team giving us a pass rush. So, man, those guys are playing great on the back end without the pass rush. So imagine if we could put some pressure. So that's all I want in the draft. Give me 4 picks of nothing but pass rushers and defensive ends that can get to the passer. That's all I want.
So if you're Kevin Colbert, that's where you're going. You're going edge rushers and pass rushers in the first 4 rounds?
I don't need anything on offense. I don't need nothing on the back end. All I need is some defensive ends and some backers, outside linebackers that can rush the pass. That's it.
With you, my friend. I'm hoping for the same.
Hey, that's why they only allow me to play fantasy football.
Randy, before we let you go, you've got a great event coming up, the one that we've been proud to be part of, sponsored over the last couple of years. Let our listeners know about the Cure for Our Friends and the supporting events that you do to help battle cystic fibrosis.
Well, I greatly appreciate you guys' support each year. We have a big golf tournament in Mount Juliet, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville. This year is April 22nd. We actually have grown the event to the point where we have a 8 o'clock tee time and a 1 o'clock tee time, and just raising money to raise awareness for cystic fibrosis. It's been a great cause, a great fight. We've helped a lot of kids, and we're going to continue to do it and continue to grow it. So, again, if you do want to play, just contact Cure for Our Friends. You can find us on the website, and we look forward to seeing you guys out there.
So, Randy, before we let you go now, next week is Masters Week, and you had a dream day last year with respect to the Masters. Are you going back again?
I'm asking every day. I'm begging. I take practice round any day. I mean, I would drop whatever I'm doing and get to Augusta, all the way from Houston, Texas. But I have come up short this year. I have not found anything, and I just need, hey, if you guys come across one, let me know. I'll be solo. I'll do whatever. But it was such an incredible experience that I definitely want to do it again. You know, sometimes, you know, people are happy just with the one time. I must admit, one time was not enough for me. It was an incredible experience, and I actually want to experience that again.
Yeah, no doubt. What a day you had last year. So good for you. I hope it happens for you, my friend.
Yes, sir.
But, Randy,
Absolutely.
Thank you for taking time to come back on the show. It's always a good time when we get to spend some time with you. You know, hopefully things work out with you for the Masters, but hopefully we get to have you back on after your event, hear how it all worked out. Thank you for being here tonight. We look forward to the next time.
Absolutely, and I appreciate you guys not talking about my ranking in fantasy football. So I'll see you guys next time, and I look forward to the draft next year.
All right, Randy. Take care,
all right,
my friend. We'll catch up with you soon. In between now and then, all the best to you and your family.
Take it
all
easy.
right, same here. All right, y'all take care. All right, bye-bye.
All right, see you, Randy. That's former Steelers and Falcons defensive back Randy Fuller. Always a great time, Bob. Always enjoy spending some time with Randy.
Yeah, he's great, and I love just discussing technique with him because he was an undersized defensive back, Chris, and he actually, you know, having played in the league like he did, the guy had to have a lot on the ball and always adds a lot to the in-game analysts of defensive play, and he can do a lot of different things, but we love him having him as a guest anytime he wants to come on.
Absolutely right. All right, now joining us and back with us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is one of our favorite baseball players of all time and one of the greatest hitters of all time, and that's Al Oliver. Let me remind you about Al's background. He's from Portsmouth, Ohio, which is in the southern part of the state across the Ohio River from Kentucky. He was signed by the Pittsburgh Pirates as an amateur free agent back in 1964, and he played in the major leagues from 68 to 85 for the Pirates, Rangers, Expos, Giants, Phillies, Dodgers, and Blue Jays. He had a lifetime batting average of .303. He had 2,743 hits, 219 home runs, and he drove in 1,326 runs. He was a 7-time All-Star. He won 3 Silver Slugger Awards. He won the National League batting title in 1982, leading the league in hits, RBIs, extra base hits, doubles, and runs created. I've said this each time that Al has been generous enough to join us here on the show, but as a Pirates fan growing up in the 1970s, he forever lives in my heart and the hearts of Pirates fans for the 10 years that he gave us excitement in the city of Pittsburgh and helped the Pirates win 5 division titles and the 1971 World Series, and it's an honor for us to have him back again tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Al, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming back on the show.
Hey,
Al.
Chris and Bob. How you guys doing?
Great. How have you been, Al?
I've been doing good. I see you have a Steeler, and now you got a Pirate on here.
That's right. That's right.
And
Absolutely.
that is a good thing. That is a good thing. Absolutely.
Al, I wanted to start our time with you tonight by talking about your book, the book that you wrote. It's titled "Life is a Hit, Don't Strike Out." I can get your thoughts. What prompted you to write the book, and then talk about the challenges that you overcame as a child.
Okay. The book came out about 2 years ago, and "Life's a Hit, Don't Strike Out." I came up with that slogan. One day I was just sitting around, and all of a sudden it just hit me. And the reason why I chose that, because that title, actually what it does, it encompasses everything, period. And so the reason why I wrote the book was that the type of life that I've had, going way back to when I was 11 years old, I lost my mother. And then as I moved forward, when I was 20, the same day I found out that I was going to the major leagues, my dad passed. And so I went through a lot of things. I had a younger sister. She's a year and 5 months younger than I. And my brother's was 9 years younger than I was. And of course, he passed away 2 years ago. He was a real bad diabetic. And so, and happened to be my best friend. And so some of the things I went through, even in the major leagues when I first came up, I was being platooned, and that was something different for me. I had always played every day. And so it was an adjustment for me. But there was always something that was always blocking me from being the player that I knew that I could have been. But in regards to all of that, I was able to maintain a positive attitude. And I never was an angry type individual. There were times when I was disappointed in certain things, but being born and raised in Portsmouth, Ohio, in Southern Ohio, I was very fortunate to be raised in a city like that, because what it was, especially in the black community, it seems like we all were family, but we just lived in different houses. And if you acted up at someone's home, of course, the word got back to your home, and you got two whippings, which I'm quite sure most people who are listening in can relate to that. But, of course, today, you can't whip children. But, Dad really wasn't into whipping people, but he was a strong person spiritually, and he did believe in discipline. And I only got whipped twice. Once I really deserved it when I was about 11, 12 years old. I had the audacity to go into a supermarket and thought I was Jesse James or somebody and try to steal some marbles. And here I was, the marble champion of Portsmouth, Ohio. And I come out of the supermarket, and my pockets were bulging. And the general manager of the store, I know that he saw me. And, when you're guilty, you don't want to turn around to see if someone is looking. So I got on my bike along with this other buddy of mine whose dad also was a deacon at the same church. And, of course, we both knew better. So I get halfway home, and I said, no, this is not going to work. Because one day, the general manager of the supermarket is going to see my dad, and once he tells my dad, I'm going to be whipped. So I couldn't take the pressure. So I turned around and came back because I couldn't sit at home each and every day wondering when the general manager of the store was going to tell my dad. So I would rather have gotten whipped that day and get it out the way, and which I did. It did happen. And then the other whipping that I got, my sister was always the first one at the door telling Dad that I was teasing her. And so Dad was one who believed in equality, and so he wanted to make sure he got the right one, so he whipped both of us. So those are the only two whippings that I got. Now, my sister got more because she always challenged Dad. I don't know why she did that. But those were the things that really has helped me even to this day. It was a discipline that I received early in life, going through basic training at Fort Knox and doing my AIT at Fort Dix, New Jersey, back in 1967. That was a great experience for me. And I'm the same way to this day. I've always been a very disciplined person, and those things have helped. People always laugh at me, especially when it's time to go to church. Our morning worship starts at 11 o'clock, and I'm usually at church at 9 o'clock. But, see, I'm so used to teaching Sunday school, and that's the reason why I'm there early. And I'm always on our congregation about coming to church late, because, God is an on-time God. So we should show him the same respect. So I was just very fortunate to have gone through a lot of things in my life, a lot of obstacles that could have held me back from being the player that I was, but I was the best player that I was allowed to be because of my upbringing. That's what has kept me all these years.
Bob, questions for Al?
Al, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, and we look forward to having you on the TV side in a few weeks. But I was talking to a friend of mine this week, Al, and I told him that we get to talk on occasion. He says, my goodness, he loved watching baseball in the 70s, especially the Pirate teams. And he said, ask Al when you talk to him next time about one of my favorite players. And I said, who was that? He said, ask him if he remembers, and of course you do, a guy named Bob Robertson, who was the first baseman, infielder, kind of a burly guy. And of course, I said, of course I remember him. That guy hit 25 home runs, I think, a couple years in the 70s. But I told him I'd ask you, and Robertson, I looked him up today. I remember him well, Al, but had a good, almost decent 12-year career. Seemed like a strong guy and a good teammate.
Exactly. And, we were being platooned there for a while. But, you know, when we were being platooned, you know, we had so much respect for one another that, you know, we always pull for one another. And, you know, we still stay in touch. And that was a good thing. But Bob was a tremendously strong individual. You know, he was from, like, Mount Savage, Maryland. And, you know, of course, we played together in 1965 at Gastonia, North Carolina. And he could hit some of the longest balls you ever want to see. And he broke in as a third baseman, and I was a first baseman in Gastonia. And so as he moved up the ladder, and then all of a sudden, you know, we signed Richie Hebner, and then they moved him to first. So we really never played on the same team outside of 1965 until we both came to the major leagues. But Bob Robertson, if he had not hurt his knee, it's no telling what kind of career that he would have had. And I know when we get together today, we have so much fun. He's one of those guys that could push my button. You know, he likes to hear me preach. I have a tendency to give sermonettes, and he would always get me started. And that's the kind of rapport that we always had. And, again, we still stay in touch. And one thing that he could do, once he went to first base, I thought that he was one of the best first basemen that I've seen. The one thing that he could do for a right-handed first baseman, one who threw right-handed, he could make that 6-3 double play as well or better than any first baseman that I've ever seen. The only one that I can remember doing that who's playing this day is Joey Votto. That's a hard double play to make, and Bob Robertson was excellent at that. And the thing that slowed him down, as I said before, was definitely his knees. He was a great talent, and it's unfortunate that he didn't get to play a lot longer. But he's a pirate. He still talks trash. You know, when we get together, that's all we do. I mean, we always crack on one another, and we had a very loose clubhouse, and I think that's what really made the team the way it was. You know, we had guys from all walks of life, and I know Willie Storger always kids him about Mount Savage, Maryland. You know, he had invited Storger down there one day and invited Doc Ellis down there, and their concern was if they did come down there, would he bring some of his friends who belonged to the Klan? And Bob Robertson said, "Oh no, we don't do those kind of things down there." But those are the kind of things that we did in the clubhouse. We talked about and we laughed about it. And I can't say enough about Robert. You know, he's a great guy, and he was an excellent baseball player.
And now you mentioned the looseness of that clubhouse, and I could attest because over the last year or year and a half, I've gotten a chance to speak with guys like Jerry Royce, Jim Rooker. Some of those pitchers were truly characters. I mean, loose is an understatement, right? But you also brought up the case, sadly, of Doc Ellis. You know, we had him here in New York for a bit, Al. It's just very sad to see the kind of life. He had a lot of talent, but how it ended for him at the end here about 10 years ago. How close did you become to him? And it must have been tough on you to see what happened to him.
Well, Doc Ellis was the best friend that I ever had in baseball.
Wow.
And that surprises a lot of people because our personalities were kind of just the opposite. And I think that's the reason why we became real good friends since 1965, all the way up until the very end. And I always looked at Doc and I laughed at him, and just like some of the other players did. But we always got along extremely well. I mean, Doc was a special person in my life, just like I was in his. And, you know, just because we didn't have the same habits, that doesn't mean that you don't get along or a person can be your friend. I know he always told me, he said, "Scoop, you know what? I wish I had your discipline." And that's one thing that he always said. And the one thing that, of course, I never will forget is that probably the last 10 years of Doc's life, he ended his life in a very positive way. He helped so many people out there in California, wherever he went. He saved a lot of lives because of the things that he went through. And that's the one positive thing that I can say how Doc left this world. And I had the honor of eulogizing Doc in Los Angeles. And I know when his wife had asked me and had told me, Doc had told her that if anything ever happened to him, he wanted Scoop to do the eulogy because he would know what to say and how to say it. And so I really didn't have a problem eulogizing Doc because I knew him. Because usually when you lose a close friend, sometimes it can be difficult to eulogize someone. But it was an honor for me to have that opportunity. And I was just thinking about Doc not too long ago because, you know, he would have had his another birthday. And ironically, I was the last one to see him as they closed the casket. That just entered my mind. I was the very last person to see him. But I'm just glad that I had a chance to run across Doc. And it's just funny how we first met. It was in Daytona Beach, and Bethune-Cookman College was located in there. And I always told him, you know, how good a basketball player, you know, I was and how Larry Heisel was, because Larry Heisel and I were teammates in high school. And, you know, we both were all-state basketball players. And he saw you guys couldn't play no basketball, you know, somebody from Portsmouth, Ohio. And, you know, anybody from Los Angeles now, all the athletes I know from Los Angeles, they know they are athletes. So what I did, I took Doc over to the college, and I whipped a few moves on him and then dunked the ball on him. And from that day on, we were the best of friends. The respect was there. He thought I was selling whoop tickets, but I wasn't.
And now talking about those early 70s Pirates teams, a guy that was still a part of those teams was Bill Mazeroski, a longtime veteran, obviously, you know, the hero from the 1960 World Series, but he was still there in 70, 71, 72. What did Maz's presence mean to you guys, you know, at that point in his career?
It meant a lot. You know, there are a lot of guys whose presence may not mean a lot, but in Maz's case, it meant a lot. And it wasn't so much because he hit the home run in 1960. It was the fact that he was a winner. He was an excellent baseball player. He was a great teacher. And he really helped Dave Cash make that transition as far as relaying on a double play ball, the quickness of getting it out of his glove and making a throw to first base. And he worked with Dave, you know, one spring training for about 2 or 3 weeks, and Dave finally caught on. And then, of course, he had that quick release, you know, on the double play. But, you know, Maz was, of course, he was still playing in 1970, and when I came up. But the fact of the matter was that he was a winner, he was a teacher, he was very quiet, you know, just like that was proven at his Hall of Fame induction. But, you know, the thing about Maz was that the respect was there. He respected you. He wasn't a guy that would knock other players. He would sit back and observe and get a real good laugh at guys like Doc. And we had some guys on that team that was so loose that you had no choice. But having a guy like Mazeroski was a great presence for our ball club. And I'll be honest with you, it really helped a lot of us because he had been there before. And if he felt that any of us were not hustling or doing what we were capable of doing, he would let us know.
And Al, Dave Parker came up from the minor leagues for the first time in 1973, and boy, Parker was a big man and could really do everything very well. Was there a lot of hype around Dave when he first was coming up, you know, to the big leagues, and what did you think when you saw him play?
Well, I didn't know a whole lot about him. I'd heard about him. But when Gene Kleins broke his ankle out in San Diego, I never forget that, they called Dave Parker up. And when I first saw him play, I said, you got to be kidding me. Here's this guy who's that big, that fast, who could throw, who could hit for average and power. He could do it all. But the one thing that I always liked about Dave, of course, I always loved confident people. He did not lack confidence. He knew he could play. And that fit right into the Pirate system. You know, that confidence factor was all the way through our organization. But Dave Parker, in my estimation, if there was ever a Hall of Famer, Dave Parker is one. I don't know what happened back in Pittsburgh, back when they had that problem. I have no idea to this day what happened. But that has to be the only thing that's keeping Dave Parker out of the Hall of Fame, because during his time and when he was at his best, in my opinion, he could have been the best player in baseball. Great player and a good guy. Right now he's dealing with Parkinson's right now, but he seems to be doing okay. I like to stay in touch with him, you know, maybe once every other week, you know, to keep that confidence factor up. And so he still is very confident, and he feels that, you know, things will work out. But, you know, we just stay prayerful of his situation. Great guy to play for, and he pushed you. And, you know, he made other guys play. He was that good.
And now, along with you and Willie Stargell, one of my other favorite Pirate players from those 70s teams was Manny Sanguillen. He always seemed to have a smile on his face. He was a career 296 hitter, threw out 39% of the base stealers, your would-be base stealers. But talk about Manny and what you remember about playing with him.
Well, what I remember more than anything else was in spring training in 65 and 66, Manny and I were roommates. Now, here's Manny Sanguillen from Panama, who can't speak no English. Here's Al Oliver from Portsmouth, Ohio, who couldn't speak Spanish. Now, we are roommates. Now, picture that. And I never will forget, I don't know how we did it, and we still talk about it. We talked about it 3 weeks ago when I went to the Pirate Fantasy Camp. I don't know how we did it, but it seemed like we understood each other without knowing each other's language. And, you know, in due time, you know, I began to learn a lot of Spanish. And, of course, we played together in the minor leagues. And as he came up, you saw that he was going to be a great catcher because he had great speed and he had a great arm and he could throw from any position behind the plate. I always enjoyed playing with Manny because you're right. He always had a smile on his face all the time. I remember one time Roberto Clemente said, well, he's not smiling. That's just his natural facial expression, because if you turn your back, he might stab you in your back. But Roberto, you had to understand him. He could come up with some stuff every now and then, but he halfway thought that was his facial expression. It was just natural. He really wasn't smiling, but Manny does smile all the time. He's a happy-go-lucky guy. And I'm just glad that I had a chance to come up through the minor leagues with him and play the years with him in the major leagues. You know, if it wasn't for Johnny Bench, he would have gotten more recognition for how great a catcher he really was. He's one of the few catchers that could run. And the only other catcher I remember that really had good speed back then might have been Tim McCarver. But playing with Sanguillen is a treat, and being around him today is more of a treat because, like Steve Blanche said it best not too long ago, Manny's English, instead of getting better, is getting worse. But what it is, Manny gets so excited. And when he gets really excited, you can't understand a word he's saying, and the people that he's talking to are laughing, and we don't know if they're laughing with him or at him. But they're laughing. Everybody's laughing. And I asked a good buddy of mine, I said, be honest with you, with me. Did you understand what Manny was saying? And I have 2 grandsons that met Sanguillen about 5, 6 years ago, and Manny was talking to him. And I asked my 2 grandsons, Guy and Ty. Now, right now, Sangi is their favorite player. They never will forget Manny Sanguin because of his speaking. And they love Manny. And he is one guy that, when you talk about popularity in Pittsburgh, of the Pirate teams, Nazi probably right now, Maz might be now number 1. But Sangi, in my estimation, would probably be number 2. But he was always popular and just a great player and a super individual. We just hope that he gets his knees operated on because, he's moving real slow. And I think he's afraid to get surgery.
Al, it's never enough time when we have you on the show because I still got a ton of questions. I'm sure Bob's got a ton of questions. But we can't thank you enough for continuing to be a part of the show. Hopefully we'll pick up where we left off in the not too distant future, a few weeks, whenever your schedule is convenient for you. But we thank you for being here. We hope you'll come back again real soon.
Okay, well, I always enjoy talking to you guys, so you guys just keep up the good work.
Thanks so much,
We
Al.
thank you very much for that, Al. Take care, Al. We'll catch up hopefully soon. Like I say, in between now and then, all the best to you and your family.
I appreciate that. Vice versa.
Good night. Take care.
Thanks,
okay,
Al.
You too. Oh, you're welcome.
That's a former all-star first baseman outfielder for the Pirates and several other teams, but all we care about is his time with the Pirates. But holy cow, Bob! It's always such a thrill to speak to Al, and I'm sincere. I probably have another dozen questions. I'm sure you have the same, and you're going to get to have him on the TV side here in a couple of weeks. But no matter how much time we spend with Al, it just never seems like it's enough.
No, when you were that good, and he's such a terrific interview to begin with, but when you were that good and played for so long, Chris, and the stories he has and the characters he played with, we haven't even touched the surface yet. I think we'd have to get him on a dozen times to at least scratch the surface, but man, you really just have your mouth dropped open when you're speaking with Al because it's so fascinating. You and I grew up watching him, and again, I tell people that early 80s in Montreal, he was the best player in the game, and people said, I didn't even know he played in Montreal, but Al was that kind of guy. He was the ultimate team guy, Chris, and never put himself ahead of the team, and just check out his stats. He's a great guy, and I can't wait to speak with him again.
Absolutely right. And, one other note, when we talk about guys who should be in the Hall of Fame, and we said this about Al several times, but Al Oliver, deserves to be in the Hall, as does Dave Parker, but Al Oliver definitely deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. To your point, Bob, just go check out his stats. Go on Baseball Reference and look up Al Oliver and look up his great baseball stats and what a great player he was for so many years. He had a great career. So hopefully we get to have him back on the radio side. But with you, Bob, I look forward to hearing your interview with Tony D'Angelo, our good friend, but the two of you on the TV side should be great.
Can't wait, Chris.
All right, before we get to our next guest, Marc Uhlmann, I want to give a shout-out to our good friend Renee Schull over at Career Engagement Institute. Folks, if you're upside down in your career, and what does that mean, right? You're ready to move on, right? Go to careerengagement.institute to see how Renee can help you. You've heard some of our guests here on TNT, like Thursday Night Tailgate Hall of Famer Toy Cook singing Renee's praises. And, if you spend 2 minutes with Renee, you're going to understand exactly why Toy talks about her, brags on her, why we brag about her every single week here on Thursday Night Tailgate. When you're ready to make a job move, folks, you want to work with someone who you can trust and actually has your best interests at heart, and you know how rare it is to find somebody like that. Well, no one fits that description any better than Renee Schull does. She's a wonderful person, the exact kind of person you want to work with and have working for you. She has done some great things from some of our guests who have been in transition, from being pro athletes and are now getting into the job market. Folks, I'm telling you, Renee is just the very best. There isn't a better way to describe her than that. If you're an athlete or anyone in the job market, do yourself a favor and reach out to Renee. You're going to be so very glad that you did. Go to careerengagement.institute online and give her a follow on Twitter @IntegratedPlay. All right, now joining us on the Kyvan Foods guest line is Marc Uhlmann. Pittsburgh sports fans know Marc as the co-owner of the site SteelCityBlitz.com and the host of Steel City Blitz podcast, along with his co-hosts C. Nick and Ben Anderson. You also know Mark as @SteelDad on Twitter, and he's a great follow, and we certainly can't thank Mark enough for being such a great supporter of our show. He's a member of our Listener Hall of Fame, and we are excited that he is a part of the show tonight here on Thursday Night Tailgate. Hey, Mark, Chris, and Bob, thanks for coming on the show.
Hi, Mark.
Guys, my pleasure. I don't know how in the world I'm supposed to follow Al Oliver. I mean, that was just incredible, just sitting here listening to him. And like you both said, I know there's a million more questions he could have been asked, and it was just fun listening to him. So I'm going to do my best to follow that up. But thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely, Mark. So, Mark, I wanted to start by getting your thoughts on some things going on with the Steelers, particularly wide receiver Martavis Bryant. Boy, it just seems like it's taken forever to get him back reinstated into the league. I feel pretty confident that that's the way it's going to go, but no news yet officially so far. From what I've read, it appears like he's been, a good citizen during his year off, working out hard. I read he, put on 20 pounds of muscle, that sort of thing.
Yep.
But Mark, if and when he gets reinstated, do you feel like he's a guy that the Steelers and Steeler fans can depend on going forward?
Well, the term depend, I think, is a very interesting word here with him because, and I get frustrated with a lot of Steeler fans who, they tweet things all the time about how they can't wait till he gets back and, almost like he's the second coming, if you will. And look, the guy is a difference maker on offense. He will open up things for Antonio Brown. He will open up things for everybody else on the offensive side, and he'll make big plays. The question is, what is his condition off the field? Because, it's going to be one thing for him to get back in the Steelers facility, be around his teammates, be around his coaches. But, there's going to be moments where he's at home. He's out at night. He's doing things that once were not so good for him. And I think that's the concern that we're going to have going forward. But as you said, everything we've seen over the last year has been positive. His workouts have been insane from what he's posted on Instagram. He looks great. He sounds great. I mean, I think going forward this year, he will be reinstated eventually. I'm certainly hoping it's before the draft, but you never know with Roger Goodell. But I think going into this season, yeah, we could depend on him. I'm just concerned about off the field. Can he continue to do the right things?
And on the opposite side of the ball, Mark, one of the big losses, if you will, to free agency has been Lawrence Timmons, and I believe the Steelers, looked at him and thought they, perhaps he lost a step in coverage, therefore it wasn't worth, the asking price. He ended up signing a 2-year, $12 million contract. 11 of that 12 was guaranteed. Now Vince Williams is currently slated to take over that vacated inside linebacker position. I'm pretty sure he isn't going to be any better at covering tight ends or anybody else for that matter, but he comes certainly at a much lower cost, $2.5 million a year. Are you comfortable with Vince Williams and Ryan Shazier at the inside linebacker? And then I think the other part of that question, part B to that question, Mark, would be who do you expect to fill in when Ryan Shazier goes down week 4 with an injury?
Oh boy, why did you have to go there? I think. First of all, you're absolutely right. The Steelers weren't going to go any higher with Lawrence Timmons than, say, $5 million a year, and certainly Miami offered him more than that, and I think the Steelers did the proper thing there. Vince Williams is a guy that it is very difficult not to like. He hustles his butt off. He's a great energy guy. He tackles probably the best tackler on the Steelers overall. But there's deficiencies there. There's deficiencies in coverage. There's deficiencies in being able to read and react to the play, just in that general sense. So that is a concern. You really don't pick up anything there because, I think Timmons was still better than him when it came to like zone coverage. And certainly they both struggle a little bit in trail coverage where they get behind a guy and forget it. The quarterback's going to lay it in there, and we're looking at a big play. So I'm concerned about that. I mean, the defenses these days, especially the Steelers, they're in specialty defenses, nickel, dime, so often now. It's well over 55% now. So you wonder how often he's going to be on the field. But, the scarier part is what you mentioned, Ryan Shazier. He has not totally proven that he can stay 100% healthy. And we're deficient there. So I think that depending on how this draft unravels, I think edge rusher, cornerback is very, very high, but don't be surprised if there's somebody that maybe drops as an inside backer that they think that they can take, because they are a little weak all of a sudden there, and it's a major concern.
Yeah, and just on a side note, and Bob, you'll appreciate this, Ryan Shazier is, he's played 3 seasons in the league. He's never played in weeks 4, 5, or 6. In any of those 3 years, he's sort of the Clay Buchholz, Bob, of football. But
yeah, please,
Mark. Speaking of injuries, right? We frequently injured guys. Ladarius Green has been a major weapon for Ben Roethlisberger when he's been in the lineup. Unfortunately, that's only happened 6 times. He missed the first half of last season. And depending on who you believe, Mark, whether that was an ankle injury or headaches in conjunction with a concussion, but we lost him after Week 14 in the game against Cincinnati. That he was done for the year at that point. Is he a guy that you can depend on, at tight end going forward, or is that a position that the Steelers really need to consider drafting, here next month?
I think they definitely have to take a strong look at it. It's a good tight end class in the draft. I mean, you're still going to get a pretty quality guy rounds 3, 4, and 5. Are you going to be able to get the athleticism that Green brings? Probably not at that point. But I think I have more confidence in Martavis Bryant right now being available for every game rather than Ladarius Green. And Green's an interesting case. I mean, he had some head injuries at San Diego and that ankle injury. I don't know that we'll ever get the true story on all of that compared to whether or not it was the head injury keeping him out. But I just, the other thing he's got to think about is his own, livelihood going forward outside of football, because he's had this issue now several times. And for a guy with a concussion history to be out that long, and I just don't know how you depend on him. And I agree with you. He's fantastic to have. And I know Ben Roethlisberger loves having him, but can you depend on him? I don't think you can. So I would not be a bit surprised if the Steelers look for as athletic as they can tight end in the draft.
Bob, questions for Mark?
Yeah, Mark, thanks for coming on. And your expertise of the Steelers is so appreciated. We speak so much to ex-Steelers and about the Steelers, and I'd like to get your opinion, Mark, about Mike Tomlin. He has a 10-year body of work now. Yeah. And, again, over 100 wins. He's got the 2 titles, the 1 Super Bowl championship. But then again, Mark, we know the expectations are so high there. And we've been questioning his time management, and now he says he's not going to really change his approach as far as trying to beat New England. So there's a couple of things out there that it seems like they're rubbing Steelers fans a little bit the wrong way. But I just want to get your overall opinion of the 10 years of body of work so far.
Well, Tomlin has been, let me just say, he is a very good football coach. I think, I don't care what kind of personnel you have when you walk in the door, which obviously he had pretty good personnel when Bill Cowher left. You still got to be able to manage it. You got to be able to coach it. You got to be able to deal with it every single day. And I think he's done a great job at that. And I mean, look, he's had 2 8-8 seasons. Everything else has been above the board. There's not too many franchises that can say that. And I'm willing to bet you if Mike Tomlin went on the market tomorrow, you'd probably have 5 or 6 phone calls immediately to bring him in. Now that said, has this team at times underachieved? Yeah, I think it has. I think there have been some questionable moments. I think time management, as you mentioned, has always been a little bit of a sticking point for Coach Tomlin, and I think that he has matured. I think he's learned not to put his foot in his mouth sometimes. Of course, the whole raising hell type comment there, and couple seasons ago, came back to get him. But I think he's a very, very good football coach. I would say this. I think you're only as good as kind of the teams that beat you. You have to address that. And I know there's been a lot of discussion. Well, you don't want to build your team just to beat one team. And well, I think the Steelers have proven they can pretty much beat everybody in the AFC, and the exception is New England, and they're not exactly going to get worse in 2017. So we all saw what was happening in the AFC title game. We saw a team that lacked the ability to get pressure. We saw a team that lacked the ability to cover in any sort of man-to-man situation, and it was a problem. And so I don't necessarily buy that you don't plan to beat one team. I think you have to. I go back to the 70s. I look at the Oilers, when they couldn't get past the Steelers those few years to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's the type of frustration level I think Steelers fans are starting to have when it comes to the Patriots. So it is interesting. But Mike Tomlin's a very, very good football coach, and I don't think there's too many guys in this league I would rather have than him.
And Marco, you had mentioned Roethlisberger, and to me, he's just a fascinating guy. I think for the majority of people that they follow football, the first word that comes to your mind when you think of Big Ben is toughness. And we're hearing that he wants to play a long time. They think he can play a long time. This guy's been in the league 13 years, Mark, and I think you'd agree. They haven't been 13 soft or easy years for him. He takes shots. He's a tough guy. He plays hurt. And you just wonder, I wonder how long he can do it. I think his place in the Hall of Fame is cemented. He's going to pass for 50,000 yards. But how long do you see him doing this as far as mentally, how long he can keep up this toughness, Mark?
I was having this discussion with somebody this week, and we were talking about Brady and Roethlisberger, and obviously Brady is older. But when you look at just the injury history, the games missed, I mean, Ben's body is just significantly more beaten up. And I look at it like he's got, I think, 2 more years where he can play at a real high level. And, of course, that assumes that he stays healthy and doesn't have any major injuries. I think it'll be a situation where if you have Bryant, which we expect to do, you obviously got Brown, you got Bell, he just has to be the facilitator. He's just got to be able to get to the line of scrimmage, find out where he's going with the ball, and let those guys do the work. And obviously, Haley was brought in to get the ball out of his hands quicker. But at the same time, Ben is who he is. He's the type of player that does not like to waste a play. And, yes, that's come back to bite him many, many, many times in terms of a turnover or taking a shot he otherwise probably shouldn't have. But at the same time, it's what we love about him. He makes plays out of absolutely bad situations, and his body has paid the price for that. So I really think it's about a 2-year window right now, and then I think once you get past that, then it just kind of becomes up to him and just how good he actually feels.
Mark, before we let you go, let our listeners know how they can, hear your podcast, because you guys do such a great job, and then follow not only you but Steel City Blitz on social media as well.
Yeah, we're at SC Blitz on Twitter, and then my handle is at Steel Dad, as you guys mentioned. The podcast we do live almost every Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern this week, and next week will be a little bit different, but then we'll be back in our normal Thursday slot. But we do that live on Spreaker.com, and then of course you can download the podcast from Spreaker or from right at SteelCityBlitz.com. And we did a show last night. We covered the edge rushers that the Steelers are looking at in this draft, and we're actually going to do one coming up on Sunday. We're going to do a little draft preview thing where we'll focus on the cornerbacks, because that certainly seems to be the next big thing. But yeah, we have a good presence on Facebook, Facebook.com, Steel City Blitz, and I mentioned Twitter and stuff, and yeah, so we're out there. We are the type of site we like to analyze. We like to give opinions and just kind of go from there. Be as realistic as we can about our Steelers.
There you go. And you guys do a great job. Mark, thank you so much for taking time out of your night to come and be a part of the show. We hope you come back and do it again sometime, probably during the season. Share more of your thoughts and insights with us because you're fantastic.
Hey, thank you guys. I really, really appreciate it. Like I said, listening to you guys as long as I have, some of the great stories I hear on your podcast. Just keep it up. You guys are doing a great job, and thanks for having me on tonight.
Our honor.
Thank you very much for that, Mark. Take care, Mark. All the best to you and your family, my friend.
Thank you. Same to you.
Good night.
Again, that's Marc Uhlmann. You can follow him online at Steel Dad. He's a great follow and a great guy. And boy, we can't thank him enough for being a part of the show tonight. All right, when Bob and I come back, we'll be turning on the Thursday Night Tailgate Spotlight on the positive. Hear which players are doing great things in their communities. We'll do that, then we'll wrap up the show on the other side of these words from our friends at Coastal Orthopedics and Kyvan Foods.
Are you suffering from chronic pain in your shoulders, hips, knees, or wrists? Tired of living life with an old injury that just won't go away? If you answered yes to either of these questions, we can help. At Coastal Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Dr. Candelora and his fine staff of medical professionals will get you back on the road to recovery. Their state-of-the-art facility and attention to detail will ensure you will be enjoying life again and feeling invincible in no time. Since 1991, Dr. Candelora and Coastal Orthopedics have been specializing in joint replacement, arthritis, and osteoporosis care, as well as pediatric and adult general orthopedics. Visit us on the web, www.bone-dr.com, or call our Newport Richey office just north of Tampa at 727-848-1417. Proud sponsors of Mike Ditka's The Gridiron Greats Assistance Fund.
This is Reggie Kelly, former Cincinnati Bengals and Atlanta Falcons tight end, and I'm the owner of Kyvan Foods. And if you enjoy delicious food, you're going to love my Kyvan products, which consist of our honey apple salsa, sweet barbecue sauce, and an array of seasonings. For store locations, online orders, and recipes, check out our website at www.kyvan82.com. That's KYVAN 82.com. One taste, and you'll appreciate the goodness.
Hey, welcome back. This is Todd Washington, two-time Super Bowl champ, offensive line coach for the Baltimore Ravens, and you are listening to Thursday Night Tailgate with my boys Chris-Mascaro and bob-lazzari on the Armed Forces Radio Network. Go get them, guys.
Hey, we're back here on Thursday Night Tailgate, and we're turning on our spotlight on the positive. Bob, who are you putting the spotlight on this week?
I'm going to stay here right here local in New England here, Chris, and it seems like he may be overhyped or maybe talked about a lot up here, but I think it goes under the radar screen what Rob Gronkowski does in the community, Chris. When we hear about Gronk up here, you know, he's always in the parades. He seems like he's at everyone's party, and he's still feeling his oats, et cetera, but it's kind of a skewed look at him because he's very, very into community and into helping people. We know about his talent, and as we mentioned early in the show, we just want him to stay on the field and hang around the NFL as long as he can. But no matter what, he'll be doing great things off the field. Just a few of the things he's done, Chris. He's big into the Play 60 thing with the NFL. That's getting kids, young kids outside to move. Of course, that's a huge thing. He's personally been in charge of building playgrounds throughout New England up here for some of the underprivileged areas. Having worked with Make-A-Wish kids, Chris, in the past, Gronkowski has done a lot with that right with them. I mean, taking kids to Gillette Stadium, trying to keep their minds off their worries and everything. That's just a great foundation. We can't give them enough kudos out there. But he's into pediatric cancer. You'll often see him on what they call their Community Tuesdays up here in New England, visiting hospitals, etc. So, when you read about him at parties, that's that kind of journalism, Chris, you and I don't like. What we don't hear about Gronkowski is what he does behind the scenes as far as the great things up here in New England about helping kids, helping them have a very healthy lifestyle, and just doing great things and giving back. So, Gronk, we salute you tonight, my friend.
There you go. That's a great one, Bob. And you're right. I'm sure he doesn't get near enough credit for the great things he does just because of the Gronk persona. So good for you for bringing that stuff to light. And Bob, this week I want to put the spotlight on the entire Jacksonville Jaguars organization and a grant program that they've established called the Jacksonville Military Veterans Community Partnership Grant. And the Jags are partnering with the Jacksonville Veterans Resource and Reintegration Center to welcome home and then help support our military veterans, right? The grant program helps provide financial assistance to organizations that are offering services for our veterans and active military members who are in the process of transitioning back to civilian life and happen to live in the Jacksonville area. So the program is focused on the needs of the veterans and the services that they need in order to transition back to civilian life. Things like, emergency financial assistance, local career assistance, spouse and family support if they're happen to be called back away to active duty, and then just regular social service kind of support that our military veterans need when they're coming back and again transitioning back to civilian life. So, Bob, for our listeners on the Armed Forces Radio Network, if you're a Jacksonville resident, here's a wonderful support group ready for you, when you're ready to go back, back to your families and, you're maybe exiting the military life, getting back into civilian life, right? They do great stuff. They've got a lot of different programs and a lot of different grants that can help you, make that transition more effectively and smoothly. It's supported by the Jacksonville Jaguars organization. They are out there raising money. So you can find out more information if you go to jaguars.com and then click on, you'll see a foundation link right there on their homepage. You can find out more information and about how to apply for the grants and the services that are available to you. So, Bob, kudos to the Jaguars and their organization for helping our military personnel, coming back and first of all, thanking them for their service, and then help them get back into civilian life. I think it's a great program.
Terrific stuff.
All right, Bob, it is time for us to put a bow on this episode of TNT. We want to send out our thanks again to Brian Woods, Tony Collins, Al Oliver, Marc Uhlmann, Randy Fuller for being a part of the show tonight. And, Bob, as always, thank you for a great job that you always do here as a wonderful co-host, a wonderful partner, and the privilege it is to spend my Thursday nights with you, my friend.
We had a blast tonight, Chris. I mean, we usually do, but my goodness, we have a mix of old friends and new ones. Mark was terrific, Chris. How privileged are we to work with guys like, Paul Alexander and Mark, guys that know Pittsburgh so well, not only players that have been in Pittsburgh, but guys that are so on top of Pittsburgh sports. So, but for all those guests tonight, they were all terrific, and the pleasure is mine, sir.
So next week, who do we have scheduled to join us? We'll invite you to come back always and be a part of the show. Well, next week, who we're going to have for you. And speaking of the Jaguars, former Jaguars quarterback Quinn Gray, great friend of the show. Looking forward to catching up with Quinn. Former USC and Patriots running back Scott Lockwood will be here, and it's been several years since we've had Scott on the show. But among other things that we'll talk about with him is a bicycle ride that he and many others are getting ready to do to help raise money for the Kevin Turner Foundation and the fight against ALS. What a wonderful thing that they do, and they certainly raised a lot of money last year. So we look forward to that update and talking with Scott. BC Lions all-star wide receiver Emmanuel Arsenault will join us, as will former Oklahoma and Chicago Bears linebacker Dante Jones. He'll be here as well, plus, of course, Tony Collins, who joins us every week in sharing his insights and thoughts on the Patriots and other things going on around the league. So it's going to be a lot of fun next week. We hope you'll come back and be a part of the show as well. Want to remind you, how can you follow us on social media? Well, we've got a Facebook page, Thursday Night Tailgate. Please go on there, give us a like. That's very important to us. Share any of your comments about the show. We appreciate those. Bob and I obviously have our own Facebook pages as well. On Twitter, you can follow us. I'm at CT-Mascaro. Bob is at Bob_Lazzari, and the show is at TNT Podcast. Plus, you can stream or download any of our archive episodes for free, folks, by going to a great podcasting site, Podbean. We're so thankful for those folks. I really appreciate their support. They've made us a recommended show both online and on their mobile app as well. Can't thank them enough for their support. So please go check out all the great podcasts that they have available on Podbean across so many different genres. Great stuff. And again, thanks to those folks. You can also stream us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Player.fm, a number of different streaming services. So you can find us all across the net. So you can take us everywhere you go, hear our conversations, and like I say, stream any of our archive episodes right there on your smartphone. Bob, take us home, my friend.
Okay, thanks, Chris. We'll talk next week. And thanks also go out to our announcer, Joe Lodge News, sir, for the great job he does all the time with our weekly intro and ads. And to James Brocato and all the guys from Painted Faces for the upcoming outro music. On behalf of myself and Chris, thanks to everyone out there tonight for listening. We appreciate you all the most. Until next week, good night, Kevin. We miss you.